Without a good atmosphere, survival horror games don't have a strong effect on the player. Survival horror and atmosphere must live hand in hand, harmoniously, to complete a horrific gaming experience. Survival horror games are made with this in mind. There must always be a looming sense of danger, fear, and the unknown that is embedded into the environment of any survival horror game. That's what makes these types of games so engaging in the first place. If you think about it, it's the atmosphere / the environment that tells such a big part of the story in a survival horror game. The Silent Hill 2 remake is one of the best representations that I've seen when it comes to executing on these core ideas. The use of atmosphere and environmental storytelling is what makes it so engaging throughout the course of the game. The secret sauce in Silent Hill 2 is a combination of what you're seeing or what you think you're seeing. What the fuck? What you heard or you think you heard. What? It doesn't rely too much on cheap jump scares. It instead utilizes this constant, deeply unsettling feeling that is ingrained into every aspect of the game. When a survival horror game nails this feeling, well, the jump scares are a lot more earned. Ah, finally. Flash. What the fuck? Silent Hill 2 is one of those cult classic horror experiences that is lived on in pop culture due to how solid its foundation is. Of course, this reimagining 23 years later is going to be a much more ambitious spectacle in terms of graphical fidelity. However, from what I've seen, the thing that makes Silent Hill 2 so engrossing originally was how it felt to play. The remake is my first step into the franchise, but from all the gameplay I've gone back and watched from the original, you can tell that same strange feeling that this new game captures was very present back then as well. Just how unsettling it is to move through such a mysterious, unknown, and hostile environment. Graphics have surely come a long way over the past 23 years, yet the remake serves as only a complement to what the original game was. It is a love letter to this ultimately sad and mysterious story. After receiving a letter from his dead wife, James Sunderland decides to set out to find her in the quiet town of Silent Hill. The atmosphere and tone of the game come into play right from the first cutscene. The player is greeted by nothing but a vague and emotional intro. And we get this nice shot of James staring out into the distance of what the player will soon discover to be a total hellscape. This is sort of what throws you off completely. Going into this remake, you know it's gonna get horrific and weird at some point, but you don't really know exactly, especially if you've never played the original game. There's almost this false sense of security from the initial cutscene. It starts as sentimental and touching, and it quickly gets into the get me the f*** out of here energy. The first thing you'll notice about the atmosphere of Silent Hill 2 is the lack of vision, which is consistent with the original game. In fact, it is the most consistent element throughout the course of the game, and it plays a major role in ramping up the fear factor. Whether it's the thick fog that engulfs the entire town, or some extremely dark and ominous corridors, you can't really see a damn thing in this game until it's too late half the time. This limited vision and intense ambiance is what makes Silent Hill 2 feel like Silent Hill 2. God, it's getting confusing with all these remakes that have the same name as their counterparts. I've mentioned the obvious graphical improvements, but they wouldn't mean much if the game wasn't able to keep you guessing and weirded out by just about every room that you enter. Every disgusting creature that you beat down. Or every toilet that you plunge with your own fist. When lighting is being utilized in Silent Hill 2, it is done so sparingly. There's some sort of light when wandering the desolate streets, but it doesn't necessarily feel like it's daytime per se. What I mean is basically the entire area around the player feels like a complete fever dream. There's no clear line of sight to the sun when wandering around outside, yet in some instances we can see a yellow glow clearly glaring through all the windows. It all just feels backwards for some reason. And that's the point. The vision and lighting in this game, or lack thereof, is very strategic, and it keeps that weird dream state feeling very present at all times. A lot of the recent survival horror remakes also execute on visuals and atmosphere, but it's the psychological element of Silent Hill 2 that makes it stand apart from the rest. Resident Evil 4 Remake and the Dead Space Remake were extremely well-made games, some of my favorite games of all time, but those two games are much more comparable to each other than Silent Hill 2 is to either one of those games. For as good as RE4 and Dead Space are, I can't say that they mess with your head quite as well as Silent Hill 2 does.
Get out of my head! Leave my brain alone!
Never!
There is just no other game that has quite the same atmosphere as this one. Another way that the game solidifies its brilliant atmosphere and environmental storytelling is through its sound design and music. Much of the music is intact here from the original, and I was pleasantly surprised when I realized this. It's a great way to show some fan service, and it's another example of what made the game so prominent in 2001. The music creates a great sense of tension at all times, even if there isn't necessarily a threat. You're just never really sure of the situation in this game. There's moments where the music will be popping off, creating such a great sense of urgency, only to fade away into nothingness. Walking this fine line is something that Silent Hill 2 thrives at. When the music was ramping up, it was just as unsettling as the moments where it stops completely and you're left wondering, well, now what? I would argue that the game feels even more disturbing when the music goes away completely. I mean, there is a deep sense of loneliness and depressing undertones in this game. Just take a look at the warning when loading up the game. I mean, they really check all the boxes in terms of displaying sensitive themes. You really feel it when you have no choice but to power through those unsettling moments of silence. When the music is gone, you're really going to want to take a listen to your surroundings. The combination of limited vision and distant sounds within the fog are very good in this game. Also, when you're in a hallway and you're hearing faint sounds and echoes of something spooky at the other end of that hallway.
Fuck this.
The radio is also an integral part of sound design in Silent Hill 2. If there's an enemy creature nearby, you can hear the slight static of the radio creeping in, getting louder and louder as the monster gets nearer. This is a mechanic that stays true to the original. It creates a great sense of tension because, again, lack of vision. Sometimes you'll hear that slight radio static come in and won't necessarily know what's triggering it. This will keep you right on the edge of your seat the entire time, at least it did for me. Well, I've mentioned the sounds and sights within this world and how it contributes to the atmosphere and feel of the game, but what are these locations like themselves? The game's set pieces and variety of places that you'll traverse are very well crafted and are meant to make you feel quite claustrophobic and uneasy. It can be very disorienting as well, and that's sort of the whole point. You'll be out traversing the open streets, inspecting parts of this small American town, only to enter an apartment complex and have that turn into an entire labyrinth of its own, or a multi-leveled hospital that also feels like a complete maze. These are just a couple of the many locations that will serve as the backdrop to James's story. Every location also seems to hold a story of its own. While it does remain very mysterious and vague, there's lots of notes and lore that teach the player more about about the many reasons why this place is so messed up. Luckily, there's maps for each major location, with James leaving notes and markings on the maps to help guide you in the right direction, and remind you of any environmental clues after you find them. Room after room has something new and grotesque to find, a new sort of story to tell. Everything is so well interconnected in a way that makes it feel like you're exploring the most insane haunted house you've ever been to. The feeling that is captured when just walking through these places is so well done that there doesn't necessarily have to be a threat around every corner for the game to remain scary. I was on the edge of my seat for every corridor that I walked down, and that's exactly what I did for pretty much this entire game. Just walk. Of course there's a sprint button, but that looming sense of danger, the intense atmosphere, it was so present that I almost never used sprint in this game when I was exploring a new location, and there is a lot to explore. The puzzles in this game and the way that everything just links together is very well done. It makes taking on that next dark corridor feel so worth it, especially when you're able to understand the bigger picture once you eventually solve something that you've been stuck on for a bit. I normally hate puzzles in most games, but these ones were so creepy. It just added so much to the environmental world building that I was having a great time working through each one of these. Something that I love about the puzzles in Silent Hill 2, or just horror games in general really, is how they make absolutely no sense in the real world, but when you have these wacky ideas and throw them into a haunted house situation, well, they just fit so well. It makes no sense in the real world why this hand is holding a key, and why you need to find various hospital bracelets in a certain order to obtain that key, but it doesn't matter. Everything in the world of Silent Hill 2 is completely upside down and backwards. Stumbling across strange rooms with even stranger tasks within those rooms makes sense in a world that lacks any sense of reality in the first place. It's only when you start to put the pieces together that you can understand more of the story of the small town of Silent Hill and just exactly what went wrong with it. It's all about those aha moments, when you have two items that make no sense on their own, only to combine them and have that be the next piece to the puzzle. Like when you find a bent needle and medical tube, attach them together, find a weird hole, and then go fishing in it for a key. Use that key to drain a pool to lead you to more crucial items to progress through the story. Again, it makes no sense in the real world why you would do any of that, but in the twisted haunted house world of Silent Hill 2, it created some of my favorite moments in the game. Silent Hill 2 truly provides some of the best atmospheric exploration and storytelling in the survival horror genre, with top-notch visuals, music, sound design, puzzles. It's hard to not be completely immersed in the small town of Silent Hill. The way that the game is able to make you feel completely unsettled throughout the entire course of the game, well, it's second to none. It opens up the player to a world of sad and depressing themes, and then just holds you there. The foundation that this game stands upon was clearly already strong in the first place, with just how many people loved that 2001 original game, and it feels pretty safe to say that they did in fact do that original game justice. This game is truly yet another high point in the world of survival horror remakes. I don't know whose idea it was to keep bringing out all these classics and breathing new life into them, but keep them coming. Thanks for watching.